Welcome to a new episode of Alternative Perspective. In this episode, I'm going to discuss about a very important topic called synthetic meat, also called as fake meat. This essentially is a ploy to make you even more sicker, and there is another hidden agenda of depriving you of your much cherished food independence. Kindly watch this episode till the end to get your perspective right. So, what is synthetic meat? Synthetic meat or cultured meat or cultivated meat or lab-grown meat is grown in lab using in vitro cell culture of animal stem cells instead of procuring meat from slaughtered animals in conventional ways. Also referred to as cellular agriculture. However, please do not get confused with this word called agriculture. There is nothing agriculture here. This is not to be confused with plant-based meat alternatives or alternative meat. Cultured meat or cultivated meat is actually meat, but it is grown in lab. This is also called as in vitro meat or cell-based meat or slaughter-free meat or blood-free meat or animal-free meat or clean meat. Let's see how this synthetic meat is grown in lab. First, pluripotent stem cells are collected from the animals. Pluripotent stem cells can differentiate into different cell types as opposed to unipotent stem cells, which can actually differentiate into only one cell type. So pluripotent stem cells are collected from the animals. These stem cells are then grown in a lab to permanently establish a culture called cell line. Cell lines can also be collected directly using biopsy on a live animal. Once a cell line is established, it is introduced into a culture medium or bioreactor which provides carbohydrates, proteins, fats, minerals needed by the cells to grow. Growth hormones and steroids are also added to the culture medium. Cells divide and cell population grows exponentially and muscle fibers appear. Once ready, meat is harvested. So this is essentially meat, but it is grown in lab. Naturally, question comes, who are the people behind this synthetic meat business, which is a multi-billion-dollar business today? Memphis Meats is a food technology company based out of California, which aims to grow cultured meat or lab-grown meat. This startup is backed up by the likes of Bill Gates and Richard Branson, who have heavily invested in this venture. One of the world's biggest meat companies, Tyson Foods, have funded in Memphis Meats in 2018. Food giant Cargill too have funded. Most of these companies are based out of USA and Israel. Netherlands, UK, Canada, Japan, Turkey and Spain are also into this. They are eyeing for the Indian market. Tyson Foods and Bill Gates have funded another alternative meat company called Beyond Meats. There is a difference in the functioning of Memphis Meats and Beyond Meat for that matter. Memphis produces meat from animal stem cells using cell culture technique, while Beyond Meat produces meat from plant proteins such as soy protein or for that matter pea protein. So it's a plant-based meat alternative company. Both these companies or both these methods have serious health concerns, and I'm going to discuss all these things in future videos. Welcome to Hypocrisy Unlimited. Ruling elite and their clique have hired influencers in the form of economists, biologists, agriculturists, ecologists who try to influence us in order to safeguard the massive investment the ruling elite has already made in the synthetic meat and meat alternatives business. I am not going to respond to these influences. I am not going to talk about Memphis or for that matter Beyond Meat. I am not going to talk about whether these options are healthy or not in this particular video. However, I am going to do that in future videos. We need to understand that the British royal family sits at the apex of ruling elite's pyramidal hierarchy. So it is interesting to see how do they feed themselves, right? So let's visit Prince Charles Organic Farm at Highgrove, Gloucestershire, England.
These are thorn bushes, thorn trees. But the whole aim of a hedge like this is to form a barrier to prevent sheep or cattle getting through. Unless we realize that we are ourselves very much a part of nature and not just separate from her, which is what people have been brought up to believe.
The Prince of Wales had a vision. He wanted to try organic farming. So when I came here 24 years ago and was asked at my interview for the job, would I be prepared to try some biologically sustainable farming? And I didn't really know what that meant, but I said yes, of course, you know. It's an interview. You always say yes.
30 years ago, Prince Charles and his charismatic farm manager, David Wilson, started an unconventional agricultural project. Its political and ecological topicality are undeniable,
suggesting that the conventional worldview might not necessarily be the only way of looking at things. Before we started, you could pick up a handful of soil and it was, I don't know, it had this sort of funny dead feeling about it. But the moment we went through the process of conversion and started to build nitrogen in the soil naturally, you started to notice a change.
One of the first surprises to me was really occurred when we planted clover and grass in a mixture and put no fertiliser on it at all, and to my astonishment it grew incredibly well, and that was the first stage of my eyes being open to an alternative way of producing grazing and food.
Discovered the only form of agriculture which will secure survival on our planet for future generations.
It was always a bit unnerving when you heard about certain products that were withdrawn from the market because they were found to produce cancer in rats or birth defects in rats. I had a young family, I had 2 young babies at the time, and it's often those things that make you start to think a bit more deeply about what you're eating and what's going on in the environment, I suppose.
So the whole thing needs to be seen as a whole. The trouble is we've divided it all up into separate compartments, so we no longer see the unified picture anymore. And all I've been trying to say is that we need to remember that one thing has an effect on something else. All I wanted to do is to heal things and restore lost habitat. And again, I've battled and battled to try and encourage people to understand how important the small family farmer is. All around the world, the development and protection of the small farmer is crucial. But everywhere, all around the world, they're being driven off the land as we speak. But I am very fortunate.
You can feed the world with organic farming. Have a look.
What do I mean by hypocrisy? I have 2 important questions to ask. If organic farming is the only sustainable way of feeding the world, then why do we need synthetic or fake meat which is cultivated using cell culture technique? Why do we need GMO food or genetically modified organisms? Prince Charles says that small farmers or individual farmers are driven out of their land everywhere. Who is really behind this? I tell you, Prince Charles, who is actually behind this. It is your clique of ruling elites who are actually behind this. The Judeo-Christian Anglo-American Western hegemony is behind this. More precisely, it is the nexus of MNC food giants and the MNC retailers or corporate retailers who are actually behind this. Naturally, question comes, what is their agenda? They want to deprive the masses of their food independence. The agenda is the agenda of population control, that is the control of the entire humankind. Small farmers or individual farmers are the ones who are the main reason behind our much cherished food independence. And it is this reason why today we are witnessing farmers' protest across different parts of the globe. We need to understand, unless this fake meat and GMO food makes its way to our platter, these MNC food giants and corporate retailers can never make money. These MNC food giants and corporate retailers are in nexus. That is, these food giants would push their stuff through these corporate retailers only. However, there is least probability or least possibility that these food giants would be selling their fake meat and GMO food through our small-time retailers, traditional grocery shop owners, or traditional fish or meat sellers. Therefore, they want to disrupt our buying and shopping habits. This pandemic, in a way, is enforcing online shopping. However, our choices are in our hands. But still, we make crucial mistakes. We tend to go by brand name, packaging, price tag, presentation, delivery, and advertisement. Bigger brand name and bigger price tag do not necessarily guarantee better product. We need to understand this very fact. Middle class is particularly notorious in this regard. Today, we are addicted to online shopping from retail giants or corporate retailers for that matter. More we buy from these retailers, more we push these small-time retailers and traditional grocery shop owners to the brink of extinction, and we force them to starve and die. And we run the risk of falling prey to these corporate retailers and food giants. Today, we run the risk of losing our food independence. And there will be a day when we will be left with no other choices and will be forced to buy this fake meat and GMO food from these food giants and corporate retailers at exorbitant prices. Because by that time, we would have finished our small-time retailers, our local grocery shop owners, sabji mandis, and fish and meat markets. We are already in the clutches of these food giants and corporate retailers, and once we squander our food independence, we are completely enslaved. They are quite successful in changing our buying and shopping habits, and we are walking into a deadly trap that they have set up for ourselves. Understand, their ultimate goal is total control. Ultimate agenda is to control the entire human population. However, good old-fashioned shopping has no substitute. We have been living in India in this way for thousands of years. So why change that? Developed nations won't suffer much. They're conscious, they have the spine, and they have aggressive social media. All this garbage would actually come to the second and third world countries where the governments are spineless Western puppets, and social media has become basically copy-paste of the mainstream media, and mainstream media is never going to expose these truths. Good old-fashioned shopping has no substitutes. How do you know that the meat delivered in a nice package at your doorstep is not synthetically grown or cultured or cultivated meat? Well, it is possible to come up with chicken which looks like exactly the way I have presented it in a picture using 3D printing technique. And synthetic meat companies are now using 3D printing technique to come up with chicken which exactly looks like the way I have presented it in the picture. Well, how do you know that the meat and seafood that you buy from the shelves of well-decorated retail giants is not synthetically grown? Or for that matter, the food grains that are delivered at your doorstep are not GMO, that is genetically modified organisms? How do you know that the burger meat and pizza toppings served at MNCs are not synthetic stuff? We should be going to a fish market or a meat shop to buy these items. At least a fish seller in Kolkata fish market won't sell synthetic fish. You can see the fish in totality over there. You can buy a whole fish and you can tell him to cut it and skin it. Exactly the same thing happens with chicken. A mutton seller in Purani Delhi won't sell synthetic meat. It's not possible. You can see the whole mutton is actually hanging from a hook, and you can tell him to skin it. Those who are trying to change our habits, our practices, our functioning are doing so for their own benefits, and they're driven by their own selfish interests. It's time to wake up. Understand the real agenda. The agenda is population control. Agenda is the enslavement of the masses. So wake up and share this video to your loved ones and subscribe to this channel.